Good morning, Dan and Amy. So Jim Comey releases a statement. It wasn't a statement. It was a letter to Congress, just like he did a week ago yesterday afternoon.
A second letter surprise.
Since my letter, the FBI investigative team has been working around the clock to process and review a large volume of emails from a device obtained in connection with an unrelated criminal investigation, wrote Comey. During that process, we reviewed all of the communications that were to or from Hillary Clinton while she was Secretary of State. Based on our review, we have not changed our conclusions that we expressed in July with respect to Secretary Clinton. And of course, the Clinton campaign said, yeah, of course, like we said. I wonder if now Comey will accede to Hillary Clinton's demand and she'll renew the demand to release all the emails. We've only got, of the 55,000 emails that took them 6 months to review, 6 to 8 months to review before their July announcement. Only a few hundred have been released. Let's release all the emails then. Well, there's unanimity. Hillary Clinton wanted the emails released, these new emails on Mr. and Mrs. Carlos Danger's computer. I'd like to see them released too. And I'd like to see Jim Comey resign. I'm probably not going to get that, at least not until after tomorrow. But the idea of being able to comb through some percentage of 650,000 emails in about 6 days. Plausible?
Well, that's what Donald Trump argued last night in Virginia.
Well, I think it's a legitimate question, and to help us with legitimate answers, we're joined by former FBI Assistant Director, now the president of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. He is Ron Hosko. Ron, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning. So when we spoke to you last week, we talked a little bit about this, the 650,000, and you can dedupe and you can do searches to narrow in on the universe of relevant emails. But even still, even if it's 10% of 650,000, a smaller percentage, you would think there's attachments and content that you would want to review, and it's not just one person reviewing it. If there's something interesting that goes up the food chain, is it credible that all related emails could have been reviewed in such a short period of time?
Yeah, I think so. I suspected what the FBI did for the first round of this investigation was build the machine to ingest these, to take a look at them with automation. And when they found suspect emails that included what they believed to be classified information, some form of classified, that's what was circulated to other relevant parties in the intelligence community to get a consensus as to whether they were in fact classified, should be classified. And now I think they're in a position where the machine has been built. The machine can compare stack A versus stack B and essentially say, okay, X percentage of it has been seen before. Maybe it's the entirety of what was handed over before as either is not in this stack or has been seen before. And that can, of course, shorten the review period, as can personal emails to other unrelated parties, as can, Weiner's emails and Weiner's communications himself that may be irrelevant as it relates to Hillary Clinton.
So FBI Director, pardon?
I think automation is a big part of the answer.
But 650,000 emails, I mean, some people were saying that this was going to take a year, that this investigation could take that long. So now does it mean that it's closed? Because Comey said that he wasn't going to come out and discuss it until the investigation was concluded. So does that mean it's over?
Yeah, that would be my supposition as it relates to Hillary Clinton. Now, what he has not said is how does this change things with regard to whom happening? Is there something different there? Does it implicate others that are collateral players that aren't Hillary Clinton? But what he is saying seems to me very narrowly defined, and it relates to what they found regarding Hillary Clinton. Is there some smoking gun that they missed the first time? I would say obviously not. And I think, too, with this director, he's committed himself to this transparency with Congress on these cases as they are closed. I think we are likely to hear more about what they might have found, what they didn't find, and what the volume was. That may answer our questions.
What about the Clinton Foundation? Do we have any sense of, because you have conflicting reports of whether there is an ongoing investigation into the Clinton Foundation and whether that is, I guess whether it's ongoing or whether there ever was one. I mean, it's bizarre.
Yeah, my sense that is guided by my experience and some, counsel from associates is there has been an ongoing investigation. There is an ongoing investigation. There was this recent dust-up about whether the deputy director, this is a person whose wife had received campaign contributions from the Virginia governor's campaign.
Hudzik.
That there was that he or someone
Hudzik,
else
right.
or DOJ had told the investigators to shut it down to conclude. And I'm under the belief that absolutely didn't happen. That there was a dispute, a difference of agreement with DOJ about the degree of predication, about the quality of information they had back early this year, but that there was no stand-down order given. I do believe there are ongoing investigations in multiple offices. And frankly, I believe that the foundation, the intersection of money and power, Clinton style, is what's at the core of this email debacle that she has created for herself. What she wasn't trying to do was, in my mind, conceal State Department records. It was to conceal the nexus between what her activities were at state and donors to the foundation and what she was doing in exchange. So, the email investigation itself may be closed, but it may have a very close connection to what's going on with the foundation investigation.
Well, okay, so I mean, I said Hudzik. That's the guy at Justice, who's John Podesta's good buddy and former legal representation. You were talking about McCabe, the assistant director at the FBI, whose wife ran for Senate,
Right.
got a bunch of money from McAuliffe, right? Just to keep all the players here separate and accurate. But if the email matter with respect to Hillary is done and there's no smoking gun. But yet the emails relate to the intersection or melding of the Clinton Foundation and the State Department, then how could one not be germane to the other?
I think one is absolutely germane to the other. I suspect there are relevant emails on the devices that Mills and Samuelson handed over to the FBI. There are going to be relevant communications on there, but there's a lot more work to do. This is, a sprawling enterprise that even charity assessment firms are trying to wrap their mind around without much success to understand what they do, how the money is received and spent. So, it's going to be a challenge for even seasoned fraud and white-collar investigators to build a timeline. And I don't think, one of the difficulties here is, of course, the FBI is looking for a smoking gun. Of course, they're looking for that very, very credible insider who can lay the whole thing out and paint it as a criminal conspiracy, a racketeering enterprise. But the difficulty of doing that, you're talking about insiders who have worked with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton for years, if not decades. So, they're unlikely to have that smoking gun conversation either in person or on an email exchange, because they know how they do business. They don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, but I mean, but that calls into question the immunity deals that were granted. Now, this is through Justice, not the FBI. But the idea is if you get to the principal by working up the food chain, and the FBI and Justice seemed disinclined to do that.
Yeah, so I think there's some bad information about the immunity deals. A couple of them were for some of these IT guys who basically the machinery for Clinton. And for Mills and Samuelson, my understanding is those were very, very narrow grants of immunity, essentially to produce the laptops that contained their work product, the reviews of all the emails. That's very narrow. That's for the active production.
Yeah, but
so
it was still unnecessary.
Or others.
That was still unnecessary. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do that to get Mills's computer.
Right. I think that what the FBI wanted to do here was speed up the active production so they could move quickly in the investigation. And I believe that's their position today, that with the IT guys and both with Mills and Samuelson, that moved the investigation forward. They lost really nothing in their ability to prosecute if they found other criminality, so that they traded away nothing and they were able to move quicker through the investigation.
The only thing I would say to that, Ron, though, is a subpoena would have put a lot of pressure on them, public pressure, political pressure to produce. But anyway, go
I
ahead.
They
don't
could have just
disagree.
been at
Look,
the computer.
I've worked criminal cases my entire career. You know, our first move was go get a grand jury number, ask the prosecutor for a stack of subpoenas, and go get about your work.
Yeah.
That is the routine. The FBI went down a different path here. They were really treating this initially as a counterintelligence matter. That's who investigated it, was the counterintelligence side of the FBI. And they went down a different road with the National Security Division folks at DOJ. I do believe there were subpoenas issued, though.
All right. So moving on quickly, our buddy Brett Baer over at Fox News, he had reported last Wednesday that Hillary Clinton faced a likely indictment as a result of the FBI investigation in the Clinton Foundation, and that, an unsecured server for foreign countries were able to hack into that. Turned out to be a false report, but is the
you recast it. I wouldn't call it a false report.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I wanted to ask Ron. Is there any validity to this story?
I think there is a massive volume of disinformation, of bad information, of political spin in this case. There has been from the start. One side or the other will pick it up and they'll run with it. And, friends of mine, and to include, there's a mutiny going on inside the FBI. Nothing could be further from the truth. Are there voices of dissent in how the email case was investigated, undertaken? In the director's comments in July, yes, there were some voices of dissent. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, the folks that I'm talking to, there is no stacks, and this has been publicly reported. There are stacks of resignations on Comey's desk waiting for him to sign. People are turning their back to him as he walks down the hallway. That people want him out. They're disrespecting him in the halls of the Hoover Building. None of that is true. A published report that's been recirculated, a former executive assistant director who was part of the investigation, that he left in disgust with how the case was going. He left because he was eligible to kids headed to college or in college. He had a great job offer, and it was time to go.
All right, okay, Rob, let me ask you one other question, because a lot of the supposition when Comey issued his letter a week ago Friday was, well, he's got to have something, otherwise he wouldn't do this 10 days before an election. The idea that he would go on a fishing expedition, as it were, without knowing or having some indication of what was going to be contained in those new emails, does that strike you as odd?
I suspect, and I'll use this analogy. If police officers are executing a drug search warrant and they knock down the door of a house, and as they're searching for drugs, they go into the back bedroom and they find a couple of bodies. Typically, what they will do is back out. They will get another search warrant to expand the scope of the original and start their process fresh. But they have not unseen the bodies, right? They've seen them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the case here, where when the FBI first got a look at what came off of these devices of wieners, somebody had a look and a sense of, and whether that is, through automation, looking at the metadata. The FBI has very sophisticated tools. They can take your cell phone, hook it up to a device, and put your communications in neat little buckets that tell me how often Ron talked to John, and Ron talked to Jane, and Jane talked to, Ron talked to Steve, and have a sense, without doing the deeper dive into the actual context, they can get a good sense of what's in there. And I think that's where they were when he made his announcement, that they had a whiff of the volume, and that there were a large volume of communications between Abedin and Clinton. And that was enough to say I need to inform Congress.
All right.
That's my belief.
Although it wasn't so long ago that they were putting the screws to Apple to unlock a terrorist's cell phone. But anyway, Ron Hosko, former FBI assistant director, the president of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. Ron, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to talk to you. Yeah.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.